Greetings to the anointed. The truth revealed too late is the only thing more harmful than a lie. Take a moment to process that. Now just picture, discovering that the person you trusted the most had been constructing a betrayal so heinous that it left onlookers feeling physically ill. This is where the twist lies. Stabbing you in the back wasn't all that was involved. That would have been too simplistic. No, this was a deceptively marinated, slow-cooked gourmet treachery, accompanied by public shame. This is a fact. According to studies, betrayal activates the same brain region as physical agony, which explains why some of you felt as though you simultaneously needed a lawyer and an ambulance. However, this wasn't a paper cut to the heart in your case, selected one. Someone with a rusty butter knife was doing open-heart surgery, but you handled it like a god, composed and unfazed, like a person watching a novice magician fumble a feat they've already witnessed from the backstage area. People were most startled by that. The heavenly degree of grace with which you navigated it, in addition to the horror of what was done. And believe me, that type of narrative surprise caught your adversaries off guard. First of all, you escaped a degree of betrayal that would have made most people into the monster they encountered. The degree of betrayal you escaped would have made most individuals into the exact monster they were battling. That isn't overstating things. It's the simple fact. There comes a time when betrayal and suffering become so profound that they begin to change a person's thoughts, speech, and behavior toward the outside world. Many people never return from that moment. They become less of themselves. They harden their souls till they are impervious to compassion. They become resentful of everything they say. In every new connection, they bring distrust with them. They become so self-protective that they cease to exist. In the worst situations, they conclude that following the same shady rules as those who have harmed them is the only way to live. That's not what you did, and that's why some people find your narrative disturbing, while others find it inspirational. They thought, this is it. This will be the moment they finally snap, as they watched you take hit after hit, but it never happened. You didn't turn mean. You did not begin to plot retaliation like a deranged character from a soap show. To win the battle, you didn't swallow their poison. You maintained your humanity. And when the pain is so severe, it is not typical. The fact that others close to you were aware of how awful things became just serves to highlight how important this is. They witnessed the shame, the loss, the sleepless nights you were unable to discuss, and the exhaustion it caused. They identified chances for you to strike out without anyone pointing the finger at you. You still didn't, though? People find that type of discipline unsettling because it makes them consider if they could exercise the same restraint. In actuality, the majority cannot. They would have allowed that betrayal to change who they were, how they behaved, and what they believed. However, the light in your spirit remained bright despite the darkness of another's. Because of this, your survival is more than just continuing to breathe. It's about remaining who you are. You didn't just get away with it. You left completely. Since defeating the other person isn't the goal, most individuals will never understand that degree of success. The key is to avoid losing oneself in the process. People are amazed by that type of survival, and your adversaries are incensed that they were unable to break you. Second, they betrayed more than just you. Everyone who had faith in mankind was opposed to it. They betrayed more than just you. Everyone who still had the view that humans were essentially decent was against it. Something unsightly that occurs in the dark can be written off as a singular incident. However, it does more than only injure the person at the center when it occurs in full view. It reverberates, appending the feeling of safety, justice, and morality throughout the entire community. Suddenly, those who believed they understood loyalty begin to doubt it. Individuals who have faith in their own abilities to assess a person's character begin to question their judgment. Your heart wasn't the only one broken. The common sense of decency was negatively impacted. Not only was this treachery horrible, but it also caused many to become ill. It was calculated, which is why bystanders are forced to acknowledge that evil isn't always evident or loud due to the cold, calculated planning that goes into it. Before it hits, it might sometimes smile for years. For many who have based their whole lives on the idea that they can distinguish between friends and foes, it is a difficult reality to accept. This is where the harm is more severe than most people think. In their perspective, you were more than simply a victim. Something they believed was still secure in the world was symbolized by you. Love, friendship, trust, or any other kind of connection you had. It was like witnessing the last light in the room go out when that was so brazenly defiled. They did more than simply harm you. It conveyed the idea that no relationship, no matter how strong, is impervious to treachery. For many, recognizing how close they may have come to a similar destiny was the hardest part. When they witnessed it happen to you, they relived every discussion and assurance they had received, wondering whether someone in their own group was secretly taking notes. You unwittingly proved that no one is above the law. This was larger than you because of it. Although the impact of your sorrow was public, it was personal. The treachery made people realize that evil might be smiling right next to you while yet planning your downfall. That fact is disturbing, but it's also the reason your survival startled them. Because you demonstrated that it is still possible to come out on top and do that without turning into the same person who wronged you, even in a society where such betrayal occurs. Thirdly, they were betting not merely on your life, but also on your mental collapse. They weren't simply trying to defeat you. Their goal was to tear you apart from the inside out. They never just intended to destroy your stability, your reputation, or your possibilities. It was simply too simple. They wanted to witness your public breakdown of self-esteem. They wanted you to become so disconnected from yourself that you wouldn't even recognize yourself. This was not an actual physical assault on your life. The goal of the psychological warfare was to destroy you while your body continued to function normally. They relied on the notion that you would psychologically break down after experiencing enough stress, shame, and seclusion. They would then be able to dictate the story. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but also the souls of many others through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's great design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Take action now. Share your blessings to exalt His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. Because you would be too damaged to defend yourself, people would believe them if they said you were unstable, resentful, or self-destructive. Their approach was that profound. They weren't only attempting to cause you immediate harm. They wanted to change your legacy forever. The fact that they intended for it to appear as though it was your fault just serves to further complicate this situation. They tried to lure you into being the same picture they'd been painting behind your back, and the trap was to push you until you erupted so they could stand back and say, "See, look how they really are." Additionally, they would have had all the proof necessary to rewrite the facts in their favor if you had fallen for it. This is the bit that caught them off guard, though. You declined to follow their plan. They were drooling over your public breakdown, but you didn't give it to them. You didn't make any outbursts that may be used against you. Rather, you stood your ground, even if it meant going through more stillness than most people could handle. Their oxygen strategy was starved by that decision. People are now appalled because they see how purposeful the effort was and how close they came to witnessing a human life being wiped in real time. They're startled by how systematic it was, in addition to being appalled by what transpired. You didn't only rescue your own sanity by surviving without losing it. The entire illusion they attempted to create was destroyed. This is why, despite their belief that they were creating your conclusion, they really gave you a stronger start. Fourth, you were the last person they ought to have selected for a conflict of this nature. They genuinely thought they had found the ideal victim, someone they could dismantle until only defeat and acquiescence remained. They saw your quiet as surrender, your patience as inactivity, and your compassion as weakness. You were easy prey in their eyes. They failed to see that you weren't only surviving on your own. You were connected to something that was far more powerful than human evil. They didn't even account for your endurance. They anticipated a brief altercation, a swift surrender, and a tidy conclusion in which you would vanish without a trace, and they would emerge triumphant. If you didn't want to fall, they didn't know what to do. For someone who stood no matter how many strikes they administered, they had no fallback plan. Because each unsuccessful attempt to destroy you just served to highlight how much they wanted you to shatter in order to validate themselves. The more they pushed, the more they showed their own vulnerability. Long before they even knew your name, they were unaware that you had experienced storms. You've gone through hardships, betrayals, and losses that would have quickly destroyed them. Their contributions were not novel. In a novel you've been living through for years, it was simply another chapter. And because you've experienced worse, their brutality didn't feel as devastating as they had hoped, but more like background noise. Attacks are handled differently when you operate at a greater frequency. You don't give up because of every setback. You interpret it as evidence that you are carrying something too precious to be ignored. And they unintentionally made that public. They demonstrate how dangerous your presence, influence, and fortitude are by specifically attacking you. They're in the most uncomfortable situation imaginable right now, trapped in a conflict they initiated but are unable to win. They set a fire in the hopes that it would devour you, but it simply made you more polished. They are now forced to face the fact that they have made you stronger, more determined, and more harmful to their ambitions than ever before, instead of seeing you fade away. Fifth, your handling of the situation shifted the focus from the controversy to their personality. They believed they were creating the ideal public show, a scandal that would permanently tarnish your reputation. While they remained safe and pretended to be uninvolved, every action they did was intended to drag you through the mud. People would remember the tale they told, not the reality, in their minds. They believed that the rumors would follow you around forever and influence how people perceived you. However, your demeanor completely changed the course of events in a way they were unaware of. You didn't respond as they had intended. They couldn't use your hurried explanations, desperate defenses, or emotional outbursts as evidence against you. To preserve yourself, you didn't try to destroy them or go on a public tirade. Rather, you moved with such poise that people began to doubt all they had been told. That composure turned become the narrative's flaw, and the truth began to seep through that fissure. More people began observing them the more you maintained your composure. They were aware of the irregularities in their actions, the minor errors in their narratives, and the odd joy they appeared to derive from the mayhem. What started out as a trial against you became an inquiry into their true identity, and it became their misfortune rather than your humiliation when others saw how deeply dishonest they were. Now, it's not about what you allegedly did when the scandal is brought up. It concerns their shown abilities. The narrative has changed entirely. It's a character study about brutality, manipulation, and the extent one would go to in order to ruin someone else. Ironically, they were the ones who created that spotlight. They didn't understand they were walking right into it, since they were so intent on putting you on show. You refused to accept the humiliation they sought to instill in you. Thus, it never stuck. Rather, it went full circle and landed right on their conscience, where it should have been. This is the section that irritates them the most. The world is no longer discussing your demise. They are discussing their soul, their decisions, and their incapacity to stand next to you without being insignificant. You demonstrated that power doesn't necessarily manifest itself at number 6. It simply won't die sometimes. They were placing all of their money on a show. They needed you to blow up, to yell, to weep, to create a spectacle that would prove all the lies they had been whispering about you behind your back. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be with you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the world's fleeting concerns. As the Holy Bible says, everything done in faith will be rewarded by God's abundant blessings. Luke 6 verse 38, like that mighty oak tree, our roots are deeply anchored in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stance we hold is secured by His power. And now, you have the opportunity to be a part of this blessing. When you click this Super Thanks button and make a $100 donation, this act will return to you 100-fold. They believed that forcing you to behave in a certain manner was the only way to validate their version of events. You did the one thing they weren't expecting, though, rather than giving them that chance. You maintained your composure. They didn't get fireworks from you. You silenced them in a way that was more painful than any angry outburst. Pretending not to be wounded was not the goal of that constraint. For the sake of appearances, it wasn't about holding things in or trying to appear strong. It has to do with understanding that not all battles are won by throwing caution to the wind. Allowing the opposition to run out of ammunition while you stay upright is one way to win some. You deprive their treachery of the oxygen it needs to blaze bright by refusing to be pulled into the pandemonium. Their whole scheme started to suffocate without your emotional response to feed on. Loudness is often mistaken for strength, yet most people will never comprehend the power that comes from silence. It's the sort of strength that doesn't cry out for praise, doesn't require a crowd, and doesn't break down in the absence of applause. You didn't have to make your strength known. You just wouldn't perish in the tempest they threw at you. The loudest statement you could have made was that rejection alone. The realization that they had no control over you was what most unnerved them. You couldn't be forced into a public breakdown by them. Furthermore, they couldn't incite you to commit suicide. Each time you didn't respond, you had them bear the consequences of their own behavior without any cover. Their quiet, which they believed would make them appear weak, turned into a mirror that revealed their true selves to everyone. Ultimately, your silent fortitude did more than simply keep you safe. It ruined their plan. You calmed them down when they wanted turmoil. You gave them nothing to view except their own shame when they demanded a performance. That type of strength isn't limited to surviving betrayal. It becomes their downfall. Seventhly, you lost not only individuals, but also whole worldly illusions. It cost you more than relationships because of the treachery. It destroyed all of your preconceived notions about how the world functions and who people are in general. You thought everyone followed some unwritten norms until it happened. Loyalty had significance. Promises were important. There was a boundary that friendship would not pass. It wasn't only your heart that hurt, though, when those you trusted crossed that boundary so recklessly. It was the foundation around which you had constructed your conception of mankind. The fact that you weren't the only one impacted added to its weight. Both those who were immediately participating and those who were seeing it from a distance saw a change. It seemed as though everyone's innocence was being taken away in real time. Those who believed they could recognize danger or deceit suddenly discovered that evil isn't always represented by a villain. It may appear to be a family member, friend, or mentor at times. And unless it is imposed upon them, the majority of people are not prepared to confront that reality. That forced awareness contributed to the airborne illness. What they did to you wasn't the only thing. It was about what their deeds showed about what may happen when a person is overcome by greed, jealousy, or malice. For many, it was their first realization that the folks on the other side of the table who were grinning at them may also be plotting their demise. A discovery like that doesn't go away easily. The problem is this. Those illusions vanish permanently once they are eliminated. You may heal and forgive, but you cannot erase what you have witnessed. This betrayal altered the environment for that reason. For all those who witnessed, not just you, people believed they were secure from moral harm. It broke, and a more dismal truth took its place. Giving trust is not something that should be done carelessly. And when it comes down to it, not everyone who says they will support you will. You lost more than simply people. It was a whole phase of your perspective. Even if it hurts, that loss is what made you and other people see the truth about the world. Even while that knowledge might be burdensome, it's the type of burden that helps you become more perceptive and ensures that no one will ever surprise you in the same manner again. The eighth is that they made your life a test case and failed terribly. They viewed your existence as a test, as though you were a project they could control, dismantle, and use as evidence that no one could withstand the pressure they were going to apply. In order to serve as a warning to anyone who dared to conduct themselves with excessive confidence, integrity, or lightness, they sought to make you a public example. They believed that you would break after being sufficiently humiliated, and they could use you as proof that no one is untouchable. However, you disproved their idea rather than supporting it. What they intended to be a study in devastation turned into a real-life illustration of the depths of human inhumanity. They didn't realize how ingrained your spirit was. Furthermore, they failed to see that certain individuals are made with a foundation that is impervious to evil. It becomes more powerful. Not every blow they hurled at you resulted in the collapse they had anticipated. It showed a tenacity that made them look foolish in front of everyone. In actuality, they never merely attacked you. They were sending a message to the rest of the world. We can break anybody if we can break this one. And that's precisely the reason their failure hurts so much. They demonstrate the strength of your determination rather than your weakness. They ended up motivating others rather than depressing them. What was supposed to bring you down turned out to be the thing that made you more powerful. Now is the perfect time to click the super thanks button on YouTube and share God's blessings. You can contribute to his plan and become a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you multiplied beyond your expectations. Remember, his protection and blessings are with you in every step you take and every donation you make. You become part of his divine plan. You are a powerful, radiant being, unshakable like his mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with this confidence and courage. Be blessed, and may the Lord's light guide your way. Now, a totally other purpose is being used to research the case study that they intended to share with the world. Nobody is discussing how you were destroyed. They are discussing your refusal to bow. They're analyzing how you maintained your position without becoming resentful. The manner in which you outlasted their plans without becoming like them. It wasn't assaulting you that was their biggest error. It was in believing that their story might make you a victim. You've proven that a soul rooted in something unbreakable can withstand any amount of adversity, and that perseverance has no upper limit. The only lesson that remains from their experiment is that if you refuse to submit, the weapon they attempted to use on you will never be effective. You made forgiveness appear like a strength rather than a weakness. Number 9. You didn't decide to forgive them because they were deserving. Your decision was based on your refusal to let their poison to fester inside of you, causing you to harbor hatred, relive every moment, and devise strategies to harm them in return. They were depending on that very thing. They wanted you to remain in the same shadowy area where they operated because they would still be able to control you if you remained there. Giving them peace was not the goal of forgiveness. It has to do with reclaiming your own. The strength of your forgiveness lies in the fact that it wasn't the gentle, docile version that most people think of. This was calculated, strategic, and unassailable. You weren't acting as like it didn't matter, nor were you justifying what they did. You refused to let it rule your life despite your complete acceptance of it. Herein lies the role of the weapon. You sever the final link that binds you to their authority by letting go. You denied them the joy of witnessing you internally twisted and consumed by the same resentment that consumes them. People like them find this type of forgiveness uncomfortable because it takes away the battle they were training for. They anticipated opposition. They could try to engage you in a back-and-forth conflict that would keep you stuck with them forever. Rather, you left the arena entirely, leaving them to swing aimlessly. When your target no longer recognizes you as a legitimate opponent, it's difficult to continue acting like the winner. This is the portion that they will never publicly acknowledge. Their smallness was shown by your forgiveness. It demonstrated to everyone that, while you had already moved on to greater and better things, they were still hanging on, harboring resentment, and attempting to settle scores. They appeared petty, resentful, and caught in a vicious loop from which they are unable to break free. You ultimately demonstrated that forgiveness isn't about absolving someone. Making sure they don't bring you down with them is the goal. It's the clean break that keeps your thoughts fresh, your path open, and your spirit pure. And you accomplished more than simply win the war by doing that. On your own terms, you brought the battle to an end. 10. Long before the betrayal, you were their deepest secret. You were already living rent-free in the back of their thoughts long before they made their move. They may have cheered for your victories, smiled in your face, and supported you, but behind it all, bitterness was silently taking root. It was neither abrupt nor arbitrary. They concealed their silent, seething animosity behind civility, waiting for the ideal opportunity to launch an open assault. That you had previously noticed, it was something they never comprehended. Even if you didn't mention it, you could sense the change in energy. You saw how their praises had a subliminal message, how they were consistently there when something went wrong, but strangely missing when things went well. Before the surface cracked, you could feel the rot. And you were just watching it all unfold, chewing your time, while they believed they were playing you. You weren't given the shock they were expecting for when the betrayal finally occurred. They intended it to have the sensation of an unexpected earthquake. For you, however, it was more like seeing the arrival of a storm that you had been seeing building for years. They believed you would be trapped in the open, but you had previously constructed a shelter. They are extremely uneasy about this. The knowledge that you were able to see right through them before they revealed their actual selves. It indicates that their big announcement wasn't a brilliant move. All it did was reaffirm what you already know. And in a sense, that takes away the authority they believed they had. Because your opinion of them was not altered by their treachery. It just proved it. They underestimated your discernment, which was their worst error. They think you were blind since you didn't face them directly. However, there is a distinction between being ignorant and deciding to keep something a secret until the appropriate moment. Even though you knew their resentment was killing them, you allowed them to feel they were in control. When the truth was eventually revealed, it was more than simply what they had done. It showed who they had always been. The fact that you saw it long before they believed you did is the worst thing for them. 11. People had to reconsider their own potential for treachery as a result of your suffering. Outrage wasn't the only reaction to what happened to you. People were compelled to engage in difficult introspection. It's simple to observe a betrayal from a distance, shake your head, and tell yourself that you would never do such a thing, calling the betrayer a monster. However, the topic changes when the perpetrator is someone they know, have worked with, joked with, or even respected. All of a sudden, it goes beyond what that individual accomplished. It's about what any individual can do when given the correct amount of pride, desperation, or jealousy. Your suffering turned into a mirror. Things was impossible to see things unfold without challenging oneself. How could I possibly go beyond that line? Have I ever used my own self-interest to justify doing something I knew was wrong? If my ego was in danger, could I really do that much harm? Most individuals steer clear of this level of self-audit because it requires them to face the darker aspects of themselves that they would like to ignore. And for them, this went beyond theory. It was genuine because of your circumstances. They witnessed the swift dissolution of allegiance, the ease with which love could be transformed into animosity, and the convincingness with which one might appear to care while covertly plotting damage. The treachery was no longer only a tale. It served as a real-life illustration that being close to someone does not always imply having good intentions. People were shaken by it because it forced them to acknowledge that they were not as adept at understanding themselves or others as they believed. Some folks left your experience with a greater understanding of the consequences of their own decisions. They realized that every choice to behave honorably, even in the face of provocation, is just that, a choice. Some felt uneasy because they saw aspects of the traitor in themselves. They seen how minor grievances may develop into something far more damaging if they were not addressed. That is the secret strength of your experience. It did more than simply identify them. For everyone seeing, it exposed the fine line between morality and selfishness. You transformed onlookers into individuals who needed to analyze their own shadows. And whether they acknowledged it or not, your suffering provided them with a benchmark by which to judge themselves. A subtle challenge to never allow pride, rage, or jealousy to make them into what they hate. 12. They did more than simply turn on you. The heavenly order over your existence was declared to be at war by them. They did much more to you than just betray you personally. This was about more than simply a destroyed opportunity, a violated promise, or a personal grudge. It was a direct blow to something far bigger. Your life's purpose and calling. Your path isn't arbitrary. It has a mark on it. Your task is not something you chose on your own. Heaven has predestined it. This indicates that the attack wasn't only directed at you personally. It was a defiance of the one who sent you. People enter a new arena of repercussions when they cross that boundary. The consequences from humans is no longer their only concern. They're becoming caught up in a spiritual conflict that they can't win. This betrayal was more than simply a breach of trust, which is why it rocked the environment so hard. An attempt was made to disrupt the heavenly order. It wasn't only that they wanted to stop you. They were attempting to obstruct a mission that had never been within their authority. The risky portion comes next. Someone isn't battling someone when they do that. They are battling the person's origin. Because of this, the results frequently transpire in ways that are impossible for a person to plan. Suddenly, doors that they believed would open for them slam. They lose out on opportunities they were banking on. Overnight, alliances they believed to be unbreakable fall apart. Because you're not simply treading on toes when you question a divine mandate. You're entering the realm of judgment. Some of the consequences didn't even need your help, as you've undoubtedly seen. You didn't need to confront them and demand payment. Because the same hands that attempted to deconstruct you also unintentionally initiated their own destruction. The unraveling began on its own. Therefore, resistance alone is not enough to ensure your survival. It is proof. You're still standing because something they couldn't touch strengthened your position, not because you avoided the hit. And you continue to advance each day. You're not only disproving them, you're telling everyone who is watching that when a life is in harmony with divine order, nothing can undo what has already been written. Not even treachery, cunning, or malicious intent. They did more than simply oppose you in their attempt to remove you. They chose to quarrel with heaven, and they will never prevail in that struggle. 13. You turned into the mirror they can't bear to gaze upon. You didn't need to confront them with irate remarks, public reprimands, or constant reminders of their actions. The conflict started because of you. It shakes their conscience every time they see you alive, stable, and even prospering. They are unable to become totally numb. Because you reflect the one thing they've been trying to avoid, you became the mirror they can't stand to look into. The treachery itself isn't the only issue. The fact that you made it through it in a manner they never expected is what matters. They imagined that you would be left devastated, resentful, and buried in humiliation at the conclusion of the narrative. The premise of their work was that you wouldn't get back up. However, here you are, laughing, walking, and living your life without the burden they attempted to place upon you. They are destroyed by that, because their story falls apart the longer you stand. To them, your survival is not quiet. The sound is overwhelming. The wall they have constructed to shield their ego is breached by every achievement you make, every day you advance, and every instance in which you conduct yourself with decency. It compels them to recall how far they went to shatter you and how it was all in vain. You are live evidence that they are unable to ignore the fact that their finest attempt still failed. In actuality, you don't need to remind people of their actions. Every time you walk in the door, every time your name is called, and every time they see that you've recovered without their apologies, they play it again. They are unable to escape this type of agony, as you are now an inevitable observer of their personality. The truth you represent, that they were exposed and you went through, cannot be avoided, no matter how much they attempt to physically avoid you. They may claim to be confident or to have moved on, but they are aware of the score in their hearts. Not only did you survive their treachery, but you turned it into an unquestionable testimonial. Whether they acknowledge it or not, you are now the living, breathing proof that their actions reveal far more about them than they ever did about you. That's why they get uneasy when they see you. The evidence that they can never alter is you. 14. One thing was established by the aftermath. Not only are you difficult to kill, but it's impossible to replace you. Their actions left more than just wounds in their wake. It left a noticeable hole. They believed that when you left, everything would settle down fast, that someone else could take your place, and that life would continue as usual. They were mistaken. Your absence wasn't simply noticed. It let forth a scream. The entire setting seemed unbalanced, as if a foundation had been torn out from under it. In actuality, your responsibilities in relationships, your family, your society, and your workplace were more complex than your actions. It has to do with your identity. No position was being filled by you. An entire atmosphere was being held up by you. People didn't really realize the stabilizing effect of your presence until it was gone, but it was a subtle influence. They now realize that your fingerprints are all over the productivity, tranquility, and even sense of direction they formerly took for granted. They believed that your removal would give them a chance to shine, but it revealed that their light was never truly theirs. It was taken from the surroundings you maintained. In your absence, cracks began to show. The tension increased. The chemistry shifted. It became evident that nothing had been raised. All they'd done was disassemble it. People aren't merely missing you anymore. They're reevaluating all of their preconceived notions about the people who expelled you. The fact that your absence harmed them more than just personally makes it much more cruel for them. They seem tiny as a result. Not only did their grand scheme to get rid of you fail to improve their image, it gave them an unneeded appearance. People started to wonder why they had ever done it. And things used to be better. The truth was revealed by their questions, which is why they hurt. You were the asset, the unsaid anchor, and the glue. It seems empty now, regardless of what they attempt to construct in your place. It's similar like swapping out a precious jewel with a plastic one. The substance is absent, even if the form may be comparable. And every effort to act differently just serves to remind everyone that the project, the relationship, or the position were not the true losses. You were the true victim. You were never replaceable, regardless of whether you were deceived, abandoned, or undervalued, as the aftermath unequivocally demonstrated. Not now, not then, and never. Ultimately, this was more than simply a tale of treachery. It became indisputable evidence that you were made for something they couldn't make or ruin. Every effort to minimize you simply served to highlight how deep you are. Your presence became even more memorable despite every attempt to delete you. They intended to make fun of you, but instead they exposed their own frailty to the public. You maintained your form as you moved through the flames. Instead of being shattered by the storms you faced, you came out of them sharper, clearer, and more dangerous to the lies that attempted to define you. And now, they wish they could remove the reminder that you even exist. Evidence that you not only made it through, but also grew stronger as a result. The irony? The most interesting part of your narrative was what they meant for your conclusion. The lesson is now clear to everyone who is watching. Those who attempt to bury you merely end up putting you in a soil that allows your roots to grow deeper. Not only did you outlive them, but you also outperformed them. And that light will never go out. Don't keep it to yourself if this message resonated deeply with you and you felt every word. To ensure that you never miss another fact like this, click the subscribe button. If this video resonated with you, please like it. If you need to be reminded of your own unwavering strength, leave a comment with your own views or testimony. Our collective ascent strengthens our community. Therefore, let's ensure that no selected individual travels this path alone. Your assistance keeps the fire going. May you be blessed.